All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the absolute mind-bending power of continuous learning. We're going to do this by tracking the journey of Oliver, an 18-year-old who fundamentally believed that books could completely change his life. And look, his story isn't just some fluffy, feel-good narrative. It is a literal masterclass in how micro habits build this unshakable foundation for massive long-term success. Seriously, what actually happens when you stack tiny, seemingly insignificant choices over a decade? Well, if you've ever felt like your current resources are holding you back, this is exactly the explainer you need.
So we're anchoring this whole thing to some incredibly powerful wisdom from his hardworking mom, Helen. Think about the distinction here between the words today and forever. We live in a world that is completely obsessed with immediate returns, right? But Helen understood the profound concept of delayed gratification. She basically proved to Oliver that one small, persistent habit can completely alter your future, even if your bank account doesn't reflect it on day one.
Okay, Section 1. The one book rule, the habit, and the naysayers.
Oliver jotted down this crazy simple goal in an old notebook. Just one book, every single week. And what I really want you to take away from this is his sheer resourcefulness. Oliver didn't have money, but he absolutely refused to let a lack of capital stop his education. He just committed to borrowing books from the public library. He essentially removed the financial barrier to his own growth by utilizing the free resources that were literally sitting right in front of him. You know how it is. The minute you start a journey of self-improvement, you are inevitably going to face two types of mentalities. On one hand, you've got Eric's cynical view. Eric represents that loud voice of society demanding instant wealth, telling him that reading isn't going to make him rich. But then you have Oliver's loyal best friend Max, who drops this phenomenal long-term perspective. Ignorance is much more expensive. It's a brilliant reminder that having a rock-solid mindset, and honestly, a friend like Max, helps you stay the course when the naysayers inevitably try to drag you down.
Moving right along to Section 2, collecting knowledge, not excuses, the crucible of failure and mentorship.
Shortly after setting his big goal, Oliver applied for this highly coveted internship, and he was just outright rejected. Man, it would have been so incredibly easy to just say, see, the reading isn't working. But instead of throwing the pity party, Oliver doubled down. He read even more. And this unyielding dedication caught the eye of Mrs. Parker, a retired librarian who'd been watching his consistency. Her perspective here is an absolute game changer. When failure hits you, you face a critical choice. Are you stockpiling excuses, or are you stockpiling knowledge so you never fail the exact same way twice? So Mrs. Parker steps in as a mentor, and she guides him through a very intentional curriculum: leadership, communication, finance, and critical thinking. And why those four? Because together, they form the absolute pillars of true business acumen. I mean, you can't lead without communication, and you definitely can't manage finances without critical thinking. And Oliver wasn't just casually flipping through these topics. He was absorbing them before sunrise, on his lunch breaks, and literally right before he fell asleep. He essentially turned the margins of his day into a masterclass.
Now ask yourself which path you align with. Because right as Oliver is building this massive knowledge base, here comes Eric again. And Eric is dangling a shiny shortcut, a dishonest scheme to fool investors and make some really quick cash. This right here is the ultimate test of character. Oliver firmly refused it. He understood that while dishonesty might build a temporary, flimsy illusion of wealth, it totally destroys true success. He chose the long game: patience, deep learning, and sustainable growth. Which brings us to Section 3, surviving the copycat threat, the market test. So Oliver finally takes all this accumulated knowledge out into the real world and launches a small online education platform. And the result? 3. Just 3. That is the super humble number of students who initially signed up. When you're putting in the hours, grinding through a book a week, getting only 3 users can feel like a punch to the gut. But the compounding interest of knowledge always starts small. You got to be willing to serve 3 people with the exact same fire and dedication you'd use to serve 3 million.
And you really have to appreciate the levity of the early startup chaos. Oliver brought on his loyal buddy Max to run customer support, And in a classic, messy early business blunder, Max accidentally sent the homework answers to himself instead of those 3 students. It's a hilarious little moment, but it proves a great point. Execution is rarely ever perfect at the beginning. The only thing that matters is that you're actually in the arena, making mistakes, learning from them, and iterating.
As Oliver's platform really started to gain traction, the ultimate market test arrived. A massive corporate copycat swooped in and totally stole his business idea. His employees were panicking, but Oliver? He didn't even blink. Why? Because a giant corporation can easily rip off your surface-level product or your UI or your marketing copy, but there is no way they can copy your brain. They couldn't replicate the years of deep, cross-disciplinary learning Oliver had stacked up. Because of that vast knowledge, Oliver was able to continuously and rapidly improve the platform, leaving the copycats completely in the dust. His knowledge was his uncopyable competitive moat.
All right, on to our final section. Section 4, the greatest investment, the return on investment. Let's just zoom out for a second and look at how this whole journey actually unfolded. It definitely did not happen overnight. It kicked off with a ridiculously simple weekly goal in a notebook. It survived a really painful internship rejection. It pushed through the humble, messy beginnings of a 3-student platform. And it ultimately compounded into him owning one of the largest online education companies in the world, becoming a millionaire CEO. This macro view is the physical manifestation of reading just 1 book a week. Later on, when a major magazine reporter sat down with the millionaire CEO and asked him the golden question, what changed your life? Oliver didn't point to some complex algorithmic strategy or crazy lucky break. He distilled his entire success down to this one simple compounding formula. 1 book, 1 week, 1 decision at a time. True greatness is almost never born from a single monumental event. It's just the result of tiny, positive choices stacked up over years. But true leadership is really about what you do once you actually reach the top. Oliver utilized his resources to create this massive ripple effect. He started building free libraries and funding scholarships for kids who grew up in poverty, exactly like he did. He proved his mentor, Mrs. Parker, completely right. The books Oliver had absorbed all those years ago were now actively writing the futures of thousands of other people. And the whole explainer comes full circle here, as Oliver returns to the very same public library where his entire journey began. He hands a life-changing book to a curious young boy, effectively passing the torch. It brings us back to this absolute truth. Readers become leaders because they never, ever stop learning. The very second you believe you know enough is the exact moment your growth totally stops. Your future is absolutely not determined by your current bank account. It is built entirely by what you are learning today. Knowledge is genuinely the greatest investment you can ever make, with the highest guaranteed return. So as we wrap up this explainer, I'm going to leave you with one final challenge. Stop collecting excuses and start collecting knowledge. Ask yourself right now, what are you going to read next?